Mike, your family-owned car dealerships here in the Middle Tennessee area, is that basically how you got involved in racing? Could you help but get involved in racing?
Yes. My father had stock cars for quite some time, and that became my passion. 'Cause I had a really good friend, Kenneth Allen, but we call him Shag, was kind of a mentor for me. So after school, after I finished my duties at the stores, then I would kind of hang out with him and really became involved with maybe the technology part of it, and that was the end of it for me. We were hooked.
So where did you actually start, at the fairgrounds?
I did.
Okay.
In Nashville, on a quarter mile.
Okay.
So I ran there a couple of years, I guess, and then, well, that's not true. When I first got in, I wasn't supposed to be there, so I kind of got in on the 5/8 and didn't turn out quite like I wanted it to. So we started the next year on the quarter mile.
Okay. All right. Now, why weren't you supposed to be there? Age?
I was 15, and the driver was a little late getting there, so I was going to warm the car up. So I did that, but we loaded it up and went back home to repair it. So.
It's easier to ask forgiveness than it is.
That's right. That's right. I was asking a lot of forgiveness after that one.
Now, you got your feet wet here. At what point did you start focusing on a move to Winston Cup?
Well, I mean, as a kid, you're always focused on that, but it maybe in a dream. But after the quarter mile, then I did go to the 5/8 at Nashville, and ran there. And after we won the points deal, my father got out of racing.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And I'm like, ooh, what do I do now? So I heard of this driver. I mean, this driver had left his team, and they just won the Snowball Derby. I said, well, it won't hurt to ask. So I drove down. Well, I called him, and then I asked him if he could meet, talk about a few things. So when I did, he said, well, sure, how about tomorrow? I'm like, oh, boy, I'm working, So I took off, and I went to Birmingham and met with B.R. Jones was his name. And 17 years later, I stopped driving for him. So it was a good relationship. Well, we went to, he said, okay, well, let me think about it. And so I left there thinking, well, I better keep searching. So I kept calling people. So him and Larry Mack called me, I guess it's maybe even a week later, and said, hey, let's try running Op Alabama.
Now, is this Bob Rogers that you're talking about?
No, that's another.
Okay.
That's another. That was B.R. Bobby Ray Jones.
Okay, gotcha.
And him and Larry Mack Reynolds worked together. So anyway, that's where we started. So we went to Op, and we finished third, I think. It just wouldn't turn. So I went back home, and when I left, they said, okay, thanks, we'll see you soon. I figured, well, that's the last I'll hear from them again. So, but then he called back. So we went to Birmingham and won the race. So that was really the start of my traveling career.
Okay, all right. 1980, you did run your first Cup race, your first Winston Cup race at the fairgrounds.
I did.
Here in Nashville, and you wound up finishing 10th. And that was fairly early in the season. Did you know that you were going to be hooking up with Bob Rogers for the following season, or were you pretty much just testing the waters at that point?
I had nothing working.
Okay, yeah.
And we kind of worked that program out through the promoter at Nashville.
Okay.
Bill Donahoe, and got Sterling. He got Sterling a car, myself, and a couple of us. He worked out some programs and got some sponsorship to put us in a car. So that was really the start. And then I didn't hook up to Bob Rogers until, Larry Mack went to Bob Rogers first. And that's kind of how I got that one. Okay. They were looking to change drivers, but I went didn't have any money, obviously. But it was a great experience.
Now, was the deal with Donahoe and you and Sterling and I think you said a couple other guys, was that just maybe a way to draw some local interest?
Promotion.
Okay,
all right. It was.
Yeah.
and I hope it worked. But that was Mark Osborne was with the 40 car. DK, I think it was DK that owned the car then. But it worked out pretty well. And when later on, I ran up with Mark Osborne again on another team and worked with him. So it was a good relationship there.
Do you remember anything in particular about that night?
We finished. That was a good thing. Not really.
Okay.
I don't.
All right. So how did the deal with Bob Rogers come about to go Cup racing in '81? Was that a Larry Mack?
That was Larry Mack.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Larry was good to me, and we had a nice relationship there for a long, long time. But I think as I wanted it to work, so I was really trying hard, which was probably a real big fault because it just didn't. We tore up a lot of stuff, blew a lot of engines. It just wasn't going. I mean, it still takes dollars to make it work, and I brought nothing. So,
All right. Now you did work with Babyface, Larry McReynolds.
I did.
There.
I didn't call him that.
No. Give me a really good young Larry McReynolds story.
Well, I knew he was on my side. But whoever was in that car that he was working on, he is all in.
Yeah.
And he gave everything he had. And I sure didn't want to let him down. But we would work so hard, so long. And if I said a calf rope, I'm going to go up and get a nap, whatever. Next morning, he'd still be there.
Really?
He'd still be there. Yeah. So he was, I don't know if he was a workaholic, but he was just so driven to win that he gave it everything. He gave it everything he had. So
You parted ways with the team pretty late in the season when Tim Richmond came in. I guess
Sure.
he had some money or whatever.
Sure.
Was that just the reasoning for the parting of the ways, or?
I mean, would be for me because it just takes a lot of dollars. But I had torn up some stuff, and that was a great learning experience for me. And probably hollered calf rope after that. But we didn't. Again, we blew up a lot. We wrecked a lot, and that was a great opportunity for them
Yeah.
to have Tim come over.
1984, you drove for Dave Marcus. How did that come about?
We had just won the Winston Racing Series, NASCAR's Racing Series championship, and
The national champ.
the national
Yeah.
championship. And Rick just got Raymock. He went to work for Raymock, so his was they were in the owner's points deal, so they needed somebody in the car. So that worked out pretty good. We brought a little sponsorship to that, but it just wasn't going that well. I mean, the crew was great. Dave's pretty neat to work with, but I didn't think I was making the right steps to, if I was going to proceed and learn something, I felt like I needed to do something different. So that's when I said, I may just start my own deal.
Okay, all right.
So that's what we did.
What was it like to race your team owner on the racetrack?
Well, we never raced him that much. We saw him out there some, but it was Dave was neat to work with. He had a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, but I probably wasn't the one for that car at that time.
Okay. You mentioned the fact that you did want, or you decided at some point to start your own deal, and a couple of years later in '86, it looked like you started concentrating on the Busch Series.
Correct.
Did you consider that a step back, or did you consider that just a chance to run more competitively and show what you could do?
Well, the only one knows what you can do is, who knows what you can do really, but I didn't feel like that was a step I needed. And I still had the same goal of getting the Cup and being competitive and making that my livelihood. But it just wasn't, I didn't have the experience. They did things that I wasn't accustomed to. So I said, shoot, let's just go, if we're ever going to do it, now's the time because I'm going nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we decided to build a car. We got a couple of cars from Laughlin, and we worked out of a pole barn. It was real cold during the winter, but it worked out okay. We built a couple of cars and started running and getting some experience. And we kind of took what we knew, kind of like Mark Martin. Mark and I are good friends, but we maybe had a different way of doing things, and some of it worked, some of it didn't. But we just kept working at it, and finally won a race. So that worked out well.
Did you ever give Larry Pearson his Chattanooga Chew cap back?
No, but I owe him a lot. Those bananas he gave me was not funny, but we had a good relationship.
Yeah.
It was a good working relationship, and we raced hard. And but I did give him that race in Jefferson, Georgia.
How you and Larry did develop a pretty good relationship, and there was a little bit of a practical joke thing between you. How did that start?
I don't know. It just I had Kip McCord and a few guys that worked with me. We did try everything all the time, so we didn't stop trying different things until the race started. So Larry would bring us boxes of springs and shocks just as a joke. So then it started, and of course David was around, so he was always a card to play with. But it was that it just I think just out of the competition part of it, and everybody has the same goal, but they like to have fun at the same time.
There are obviously drivers over the years who have been superstitious, but I think Larry Pearson takes it to an entirely
He does.
new level. Now, tell the Chattanooga Chew cap story. That's the one that I remember from writing Second to None and everything.
I don't remember that story,
Okay, all right.
but if you'll help me with it, I may.
It was his lucky cap that he always wore at the racetrack, and you somehow swiped it and wouldn't give it back to him, and it freaked him out really bad.
Well, I did good then, didn't I? I don't remember that.
Okay, all right. Well, go back and read Second to None
Okay.
instead of just looking at the pictures like everybody else does.
That's good. Well, I will have to look at that.
You mentioned the bananas, and when I wrote Second to None and talked to Larry about everything, the cap and everything, it honestly sounded like he blamed himself for the Snowball Derby deal because he had put bananas in the seat of your car, and that had, gave you bad juju or whatever. So.
I had forgotten about that too.
Yeah, the bananas.
Well, I remember the bananas. I just
Now, what do you remember about the bananas?
Not a lot, really.
Okay.
I just remember that was part of the just fun we had. And I catch on a lot of stuff by Kip. He reminds me of a lot of things, but I don't remember that. So
Well, I can tell you, and it's been 20 years since I wrote that, but he was really spun out. He really sounded regretful that he had put that on you.
Well, I don't blame him. I don't remember it, so I'm not going to blame him. But we did have, I was going back and forth to Charlotte some, and it's been not too many years ago. Well, it's been quite a few years ago, but I kept trying to get in touch with Larry and finally got in touch with him, and we met at some Waffle House.
Yeah.
And had a great time just chatting.
Well, he's doing a driving school.
I did.
He's
That's
a
what he told me.
driver's ed teacher.
Mhm.
Oh, Lord.
I don't want to be in that.
Langley, 1987, you finally did get that first Busch Series victory, and after kind of slugging it out the way that you had in Cup and things didn't work out with Bob Rogers and whoever else, what did it mean to you to get that victory?
Everything. I mean, we were, we brought some things to the racetrack that just nobody understood. I'm not so sure that we did, but it finally worked, But at least we were heading in the right direction. So we got focused really hard, and Buick came with us. Okay. Buick came with us, and Dennis Fisher came along with us. So we finally started getting some help to do different things. So we just stayed focused on what we were doing, and with a lot of help from a lot of people. And we were still doing it here in Franklin. So we had to be ready, a day or so early to make the trip. So, and only 3 of us.
Now, you said that you came up with some stuff that maybe you didn't understand. Was this stuff that was maybe on the edge?
No, it was stuff that would be, that could be true. But it was stuff that we had tried in the late models, ASA type cars or all pro cars, that seemed to work for me. I mean, maybe I understood them more so than I understood what, Jack Ingram came to me one day and said, "Sonny, you're a good kid, but that ain't gonna work." And then we qualified second to Larry in Daytona. So we came back and looked some more. So but it was stuff that we kind of understood how it worked, but and we kind of stayed with it. So,
all right. You've mentioned Jefferson, Georgia, a couple of times. You were flagged the winner. You did, according to scoreboard, you did lead the last half of the race or whatever. But Larry did protest, and he was eventually awarded the victory. What do you remember about that night?
Well, I do, because I do remember that one because it was taken away from us. But how that worked was the scorer kept picking me up as his leader instead of second. So I had to. It just didn't work out well. If it had picked Larry up as a leader, we had a shot, but they didn't. So that meant Larry was always, a lap ahead of me or whatever, instead of us being together.
So the last half of the race, were you thinking you were first, or were you thinking you were second? Evidently, you were thinking you were first.
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
Or I would have called it.
Okay, yeah.
But when they picked us up as a leader, I don't know. I don't know how that worked out.
Okay.
But they picked us up as a leader, and that really cost us because we had a pretty good car.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
You two were pretty tight.
Oh, yeah.
But what did that do for your friendship?
Nothing.
Really?
Not to mine.
Okay, all right.
It wasn't Larry's fault.
Okay.
So they, Morris Metcalf, I think, was the score at that time, and he just made a mistake. He picked up the wrong car as a leader.
Yeah.
It was.
And you didn't find out that the win had been taken away until the next day,
or so.
Or okay.
I don't know how long it was before he called me and said, we're apologizing. We made a mistake, and so anyway, I didn't really know it, but I still have the trophies, by the way.
That was my next question.
I didn't give them up. But Larry
so you still have the trophy?
Yes, sir.
That is awesome. If Larry came to you and asked for the trophy,
no, sir. We've talked about that, but it's kind of comical now. But I mean, I won't say I was devastated, but it for sure did not hurt our relationship whatsoever.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So Bobby Allison got hurt at Pocono in June of the following year in 1988. Take me through the next few days. How did you wind up getting that call?
Well, Davey called Liz, and I hadn't made it back home. I forget where we were running, but anyway, we were on the road, so I stopped for fuel or whatever, and called in. I called home, and she said, "Hey, Davey's trying to call you. Bobby's been hurt." And we knew he'd crashed, but we didn't know how bad. So anyway, got home, and then called Davey, and then I forget the guy's name. It worked at Stavola. Bracefield? Anyway, I forgot his name. So he called and said he'd like to visit with me if I could come down. They need somebody to run the car because of owner points or whatever. I said, okay, well, I'm running for I needed one of these points in Busch, so.
Yeah.
But really, I was doing that to get to this,
Yeah.
to the Cup. But I knew it was only until Bobby got better.
Right.
And I didn't know how bad he was hurt. So so I went down there and talked to him and talked to Jimmy Finnick and Ron Preyer. And so anyway, we worked it out where we just go race by race. And unfortunately, the first race was Michigan, I think, and we didn't have a Busch race, so I was able to go without. But being gone from the shop was kind of costly because we didn't win the points in the Busch. So.
Yeah. Now, you did run full-time the rest of the season,
I
Busch and Cup. What was that schedule like?
Oh, that was tough.
Yeah.
Because I was an employee at the shop. I mean, I worked also with them. So
At the Cup shop?
No.
Oh, okay. All
At
right.
my shop, or
Okay.
the shop here in Franklin.
Yeah.
So we had an employee missing for a lot of days. So, but again, if I could get that experience, I felt like that could carry me a little further the next year, maybe. So,
What was the travel schedule like? Did you have some? I'm sure that there were some conflicts.
It was. We would fly back. Darrell obviously ran Louisville, I think it was. So I flew with him one time back to the. So I caught a ride a lot of places,
Okay.
and sometimes
Yeah.
you just had to get a plane
Wow.
and make it. So,
Did you have close calls? Not making it places?
well, one time Pocono was a real issue. We had run. I forgot where we were running Busch, but then I had to get back. So I did fall asleep on the plane, and the guy woke me up and said, "Hey, we're in the clouds. As soon as you see a light, tell me left or right." Okay. So, I came out of the cloud. We came out of the clouds, and I told him which way, and thank goodness we were close to the strip. So
Yeah.
that was a close call.
What was it like to sit in the seat of the 12 car the rest of that season? Did you ever feel like it was your car, or was
No.
it still Bobby's?
I wouldn't allow myself to feel that way.
Really?
No, I could not allow me because it may go away in November,
Yeah.
and we're right back to the same thing. So I couldn't. We tried to stay active at the shop as much as I could to satisfy what I'd committed to in the 12 car and what I'd committed to in the 84 car. So I wouldn't.
How much of a difference was there in Bobby's setup and what he wanted and what you wanted?
Well, funny you asked that because when I first started in the 12 car, I mean, they just won the Daytona 500.
Yeah.
Who am I to tell them what I wanted? So I did not.
Okay.
I didn't say a word till. We kept talking about different things, and we'd show up at the racetrack, and he'd tell me what we had, and okay. So Jimmy, I forget how the story all goes, but, hey, is there anything you'd like to do? I said, well, okay. If it's all right, here's what I would like to do. So we changed some things, and we never put it on. But I want to try it before, we go to the racetrack. So he said, okay. So they put it in the truck, and we were doing some Goodyear tire testing, and quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
So we went to Atlanta, and they said it was for 2 or 3 days. So he said, we're done if y'all want to try anything else. And so that opportunity came about. So we, and Atlanta just repaved the track. It was a new deal, so that's why we were there with a tire that could stand the heat or durability. So we put it on, and it picked up 2/10. So that was a win, and that for me, it just gave it a better feel for me. I could feel the car a little bit more. So, and Jimmy and Keith Allman and Mark, all of them really tried to give the driver what he wanted to feel anyway.
Yeah.
So that worked out real well.
Well, you did go to Atlanta for the season finale, and Rusty wins. Dave finishes second, and you're third, and you
Yes.
led some laps.
Mm-hmm.
How good did that feel?
Oh, I think most racers could imagine
Yeah.
how it was to take the lead, not inherit it, but to take it. But the unfortunate part, we had a flat not long after we took the lead. So anyway, we did make that lap up and come home with third, but that feeling that you have, it's a little different now than it used to be. But to work, really work to get there was a struggle sometimes. And it kind of felt like, wow, now I get it. And now I know maybe what it takes to be here.
So you finished up the season Cup in Busch. I think you were fourth in Busch, I think.
Third.
In the standings, third or fourth?
Let's see, fifth in
Somewhere in
'87.
there. Yeah.
Third, we lost.
Yeah.
We lost it. I think it was third, Rick. I'm
Okay.
not positive.
And you go to the Snowball Derby
Mm-hmm.
in '88, that December. How did you wind up running that race? Was that just something fun to do during the off season, or what had you down there?
B.R. Jones, Bobby Ray's, we call him. All through the year, when we thought of something that we really wanted to try, we waited, because most of the time we ran for points. I mean, it just paid more.
Yeah.
And when you're doing it for a living, you try to figure those things out. So he would always have me a car ready, kind of whenever we had time. But Snowball was the real deal.
Okay.
We used to go for a week.
Yeah.
And before we could practice for a week and try all this new stuff we thought about. Some of it we threw away, and some of it worked out okay. So we had a new car for that race. And it was brand new. So and we'd lost an oil plug, and it was really costly because we were running okay. So we fixed that and made those laps up under green, and then led for quite some time.
Yeah.
And then we got, I think it was about 40 laps to go, Rick, and we thought, shoot, we have another set of tires left. No, not a lot of people had tires left, so we put them on. And coming through traffic. And the reason I know this is because there was a guy that helped me get out of the car that taped the race.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and he sent it to me. Well, he called Liz and she said, no, we don't.
Yeah.
Thanks, but we don't think. So I kept wondering what happened,
Yeah.
And so Dan and Linda Vanderlei, they build carburetors, VDL. Fuel systems. They told me about it. Told me about this guy that did that. I said, "Oh, really?" I mean, you can see what happened.
Yeah.
So they sent it to me.
What did happen?
Well, I think I cut him off a little bit, trying to work through traffic to get back to the lead.
Yeah.
I think I cut just a little close, trying to pass the next car.
Yeah.
And I think it spun out.
What's your first memory after the accident?
Ooh. I don't remember. So I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. What was your recuperation like? I know you regained consciousness within a few days, and were out of the hospital. But what was that off season like?
Well, I don't know.
Wow.
I do know that Daryl came to get me because when I crashed, there was only Liz, and Megan, which was 4 months old.
Yeah.
And that's all family was there.
Yeah.
So my Daryl flew my mom and Liz's mom to Pensacola, and to give Liz some help because we were a new family,
Okay.
a new baby. So I do know that happened, and then I think it was 2 or 3 weeks, and Daryl's pilot and plane came to get me and brought me home,
Okay.
brought us home. So.
All right. Now, once you got back home, were you going to a doctor here for rehab or?
Yeah, that was. I remember that part. That was not a fun part. The therapy part of it was pretty tough.
Yeah.
And I knew I had to go to somewhere along the line. I knew we had to go test, and we had to go to Daytona, and I didn't know how bad it was.
Yeah.
So I probably knew how bad it was. I didn't. I thought it'd be just like the rest of the wrecks that I've had. And, that was tough, and go on. But this one lasted quite a while.
What was the Stabola's reaction to the accident?
Well, I don't really know. I know Jimmy and Keith and them came to the hospital one time. They could. I don't know this, but I'm sure they could tell. Whew, this may take a while.
Yeah. So you did go to Daytona in '89, and you ran that, but then you stepped out of the car afterward.
Well, Daytona, it's obviously speedway, and you're mostly dominant on one foot. So supposedly the brain injury that I had is the right side of the brain, and it affects the left side.
Yeah. So
braking, what came so natural before, was a struggle. So we I think I turned it around in Martinsville, and that's and Davey came by, and I said, "Shoot, well, you know what? I'm in trouble." And he said, "Well, maybe you can just wait for a while."
Yeah.
And it got pretty emotional, and I said, "Shoot, I can't do this to the rest of them.
Yeah.
As bad as I want it, this is going to take a long time."
Yeah. Yeah.
So I said, we need to get somebody. So Dick Trickle got in the car for us, and with hopes that I would get back in time, but I couldn't get clearance.
Yeah. You agreed to drive for Bobby at the beginning of the '91 season. How did that take place?
Well, NASCAR said you need to go somewhere and kind of get your act back together, if you will, for lack of a better term. So we did. We built a few cars, and we ran Nashville again with Barra Jones, and finally I got. I went to see Dr. Petty one time, and it was not pretty, but I did figure out what I had to do if I went back and took that exam. So I did that, passed my exam, and NASCAR said okay.
All right.
So I came back hoping that everything would continue to fix itself.
All right. Mike, I don't know how to ask this question appropriately. I hope it's appropriate, but did you ever second guess yourself for running the Snowball Derby, or did you just accept that as something unfortunate that took place?
I still second guess myself.
Do you really? I want to go back and talk about 1983. That was a really good year for you, racing late models and everything. You wound up winning the national championship, and you won 51 out of 80 some odd races.
51 out of 81 races.
Wow.
And that was a wonderful year. And did a lot of traveling, but in the NASCAR deal, it was only 31 of 50 some odd. I forgot.
All right.
That was a nice year.
Did you feel like you were getting your feet back under you as far as being a competitor and showing what you could do and everything? Because the Winston Cup deal that you had run with Rogers and everything, and then I think you ran in '82 as well. How good was it to be competitive again?
Well, it was wonderful. Now I'd run for B.R. Jones for a few years. and we won several races. But he was a good man to talk about things, and he was much older than I was, so it was good education. So he said, "Well, why don't we run for the national title?" Whoa, let's. So we figured out what it would be, who was running the tracks that paid points, and we made that a plan.
So how far and wide did you race?
Well, we ran one time on dirt. Wow. And I had never been on dirt, but it paid points and everybody was going. So some people were renting cars, and we didn't want to do it that way. We wanted to run our own car, whether it be a dirt car or asphalt. So you can imagine what this thing weighed, not being able to get rid of any dirt. So we took our own car and ran a few laps, and that was really about it. We weren't that competitive, but it was in our car.
Yeah. How many times a week would you race?
4 times.
Really?
Not every week. I mean, it is most 4 times a week for several weeks. But
did you have a set track?
We did. And the schedule would be out, so it would be the primary tracks that we ran were Nashville, of course, Huntsville, Pensacola, Montgomery, Alabama. I mean, several of them close. Anderson, South Carolina, places like that. But the furthest we went, I was trying to think. I'm not sure, but it was wherever it paid points for our region is where we ran.
1984, you ran for Dave, and our resident racing guru, Chase Whitaker over here, kind of jogged our memories and mentioned your most embarrassing moment with Dave Marcus. Now,
well, one of my
now you can change names in order to protect the guilty.
well,
but I would
guilty.
prefer you didn't.
I'm the guilty one. That's probably, that is one of the most embarrassing moments. But I'd never been to North Wilkesboro to speak of, so they started to race, and I'm starting behind the king. So when we take the green, it's how short the race was. When we took the green, and nobody was running the bottom of the racetrack, I'm like, what's wrong with these guys? So I went to the bottom, and lo and behold, I figured out why they didn't run the bottom early on. It did not turn, and I hit the king and spun us both out. Ended his day and mine too. So it wasn't the most memorable, but I won't ever forget it. That's for sure.
All right. Well, so what was your most memorable then?
Well, I mean that's probably pretty well at the top too. But some of the races that Sterling and I had probably are pretty memorable for me. And, when in Hickory, North Carolina, was a nice memory for me. Had a lot of racers there, good racers there, and won that race. So that's a good one for me too.
All right. So 1991, you did step out of the car. 1992, you raced here at the fairgrounds, late models and everything, and you won the track championship.
Mm-hmm. Well, after I got out, I love the sport, still love the sport. So I didn't want to give up on what I really enjoyed doing. So I thought, well, I'll run locally. And the local Ford dealers came along with me in Tennessee, and we ran Fords. At that time, you got a little weight break for running Fords. That didn't last long either. But they it was good. We almost won the championship in '91, and after that time, Rick.
So you ran at the fairgrounds in '91.
'91.
Okay. All right.
And some of '89, some of '90, '91, and '92. And during that time, the brain is a funny thing.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking things would come back to be kind of natural. Well, the brain repairs itself. Well, the brain does not repair itself. Other brain cells have to take over, and I'm like, I'm not as young as I used to be, so I think I'll just wrap it up.
At the end of 92.
92 is it.
With the championship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you spend most of your time these days?
Well, Liz and I do a lot of things together. The grandkids and I do a lot of things together, not enough. So I just try to spend some time here. We do some traveling, but not enough. So we're going to try to do more of that this year too.
All right. You mentioned beforehand, I didn't know this, your son now works for RCR.
He does.
Okay. What's he do?
Well,
Now, what's his name?
his name is, well, he's a junior,
Okay.
but we call him Clay, Michael Clay.
Yeah.
And so we just call him Clay. But he went there, Gil Martin, and him worked together for a while. And but what he did then was shocks. He was their shock tech for many, many years. And then last year, he's still with Childress, but he worked with Daniel Suarez on a 99 car, which was still part of Childress. And then this year, he'll be with Tyler Reddick in the A car.
Okay.
So he's car chief on that car.
So all these years later, you still have a legacy in the sport.
Well, I'm just tickled for him. I can live my racing through him now. But he was a good racer. Even we did it here in town, won several races at Nashville, but just decided to move on and make it a career.
Awesome.